Yesterday evening, and this was a labour of love, I went through your career. Much of your work has effectively been the comedy soundtrack of my life. Fantastic shows. At last, the 1948 show. I'm sorry, I'll say that again. A Fish Called Wanda. Obviously, Monty Python, Fawlty. Of what are you most proud, John?
Oh, I made a little program about lemurs once, which no one has seen. And I'm proud of that, but I think it was because it was a different kind of thing. But what I think I'm most proud of Fawlty Towers, because I think Connie Booth and I got the scripts really right. And that's where it starts. Then Python is very imperfect, sometimes hilarious, and sometimes there are misses. I think Life of Brian was our best film. I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of Fish Called Wanda. So there's not many of them, but I produced a few things, but most of the really good ones are really good.
But I noticed from the book, John, A Fish Called Wanda, you say is the only script you ever got an award for. Is that right?
Yes. I got an Italian Oscar.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, coming to part of your book, we're going to explore, you believe everyone can be creative, but one of the chapters is kill your darlings. Kill your darlings, and this is your friend Bill Goldman's advice. If I ask you to kill one person from Fawlty Towers, who's going to go?
Oh, I don't know, because it's like one of those Alexander called them mobiles. If you move one bit, the whole thing changes. So I suppose if I had to, I'd let one of the old ladies go, because they were less to do with the plot than anyone else. But I was very fond of all of them, and the major, who had small elements of my own father in it. Connie and I used to find he was the funniest one when we wrote him. Of course, he's controversial now because he says naughty things like you.
Well, I wouldn't get away, John Cleese, with saying some of the... Would you write the Major, would you and Connie write the Major today the way you wrote him those decades back?
Yes, I think so, because Fawlty Towers is sort of timeless. And when you get out in the provinces, I've just spent a glorious 2 weeks in York making a movie. When you get to places like there, and I went to Whitby and I went to Scarborough, it does feel as though you're moving back in time. But people seem to be much more relaxed and easy. It feels more English in the sense of the England that I grew up with all those years ago. Because I'm very old. I was born in 1939, the first months of the war. Right. Weston-super-Mare was terribly like Torquay, terribly like small provincial towns where there's not a lot going on.
In an interview last week, you said that you would challenge any comic to tell you a woke joke. Has anyone conceded? And your book is about creativity. If you weren't born in 1939, say you were born in 1989, how easy would it be to be creative now, John Cleese?
Well, I think it'd be very difficult because there's so many things you mustn't say. I was thinking of all the words that I'm not supposed to say today. And, you can get in trouble for saying banana now. You see what I mean? It's a minefield. And if you're watching what you say all the time, you'll never be creative, because real creativity comes out of spontaneity. And spontaneity is what happens when you play, and all kids know how to play. And then as we get older, it tends to get educated out of us, not by nasty teachers or anything, but just because most teachers aren't very creative. And the little book, which you can read in about an hour, Marsha Carney read it in just over an hour. And it's certainly not worth £7.
I don't know that you're meant to say that. We'll gloss over that actual aspect of it. Coming back, you mentioned you won an Italian Oscar, John. You might be aware, you might not have heard yet, but this year's Oscars, as there were new diversity guidelines, and the Oscars, you can only win an Oscar if you have the right ratio of black, female, LGBT, or disabled cast and crew. Kirstie Alley, who you'll recall from Cheers, of course, says that this would be like telling Picasso what pictures to effing paint. What's your reaction?
Pretty much. I think it's ridiculous. I think we should just try and be nice to each other, and I think we don't try not to discriminate against people. But if you're doing Chekhov's Three Sisters, I don't think you can have one as an Inuit, one as a Peruvian, and the other as a Cambodian. I just don't think it works because it's not what the play is about. On the other hand, I thought David Copperfield recently was absolutely excellent. And it didn't bother me at all that that was a person, as we say, of color. I mean, what I think is silly is that you can say a person of color, but you can't say a colored person.
Yeah, well,
to me, that's absolutely ridiculous distinction, but I respect it because I don't particularly want to upset people.
Is that, and I'm not being rude, is that a product of where you were born, your upbringing, and your age, that you have a problem with that? Yeah.
Well, yes, because you see, I go out on stage now because it's the easiest way to earn money, and they do the accounts that night, so you don't get people swindling you. When I go out on stage and make people laugh, I look to the audience, and they're all 45 and over.
Really?
And there's a lot of them, and they laugh themselves sick, and nobody has any problem at all, except when I've done tours in America, about 20 Trump supporters have walked out over the years, but that's all. Everyone else is comfortable because if I say something like, why do the Italian men grow moustaches? The answer, because they want to look like their mothers. I think it's funny. Right. It doesn't mean we don't like Italians. No. We love Italians, you know?
Well, you're very like, my last name's Ferrari, so I've got a get out of jail card on that one, so I get away with it. Lastly, Ricky Gervais would say, you can make a gag about anything, and he means anything. John Cleese, is he right?
I think so, except real pain, either physical pain or psychological pain. If it's real, not if it's drama queenery. But if it's real, I don't see how you can be funny about that. Or how you can make fun of it. But I think you can make fun of absolutely everything else. And I think the great thing about Python was, one friend said after an early episode, he said, what I love about Python is I can't listen to the news afterwards because I can't take it seriously. I think that is a very healthy attitude.
In 40 years' time, when I have to tell the listeners the grave news that John Cleese has gone to meet his maker, what clip do you want played on the news that shows your work? Do you want it from Python?
I think I'd like to see a little extract from the chariot race in Ben-Hur.
Well, that's your wish. Not that, of course, it's ever going to happen, will be my command. The book, which John rather quibbles over the price, so I won't even mention how much it is. John Cleese, Creativity, a short and cheerful guy. Perfect for a train journey or possibly a drive to Durham if you're going up there to check your eyesight. John Cleese, great. John?
Perfect present for a 13-year-old.
Perfect present. Great speaking to you, John. Look after yourself and your family. Thank you.